You already know Caillou, Canada's boldest tantrum thrower. On a good day, he's the poster child for politeness, happily munching poutine and humming "Oh Canada," but run out of maple syrup and suddenly it's World War III in Quebec. Tiny fists pounding the door and screams loud enough to make moose migrate. Now, cross the border and brace yourself for a very different kind of chaos. Enter David, or as his mum famously bellows, "No, David!" This kid isn't just cheeky, he's the walking definition of main character energy. If Caillou is busy writing a strongly worded letter, David is busy lighting it on fire and smearing the ashes on the walls of your living room. So, what happens when you pit Canada's whiniest export against America's unapologetic force of destruction? I used to think David was the worst behaved kid in children's literature. I used to think that. But then I cracked open No David and suddenly Caillou's Canada felt like a yoga retreat. And okay, David's not technically bald, but with that wispy hairline, he's one tantrum away from needing a trip to Turkey, hashtag you need a hair transplant. I read every David Shannon book about David, picked out the 3 brattiest, and then ranked them from bad to absolute nightmare fuel. I have to say, in the current AI horrorscape that the world of children's books is becoming, it felt refreshingly real to read about a character as undeniably human as David. So let's count down together, Snipe Army. These are the top 3 brattiest moments proving that David is every parent's worst nightmare. Stick around to the end to find out if there be method to David's madness. Can David be redeemed? I'm Snipe Snap, he's Lucky, let's get started. Number 3, David gets in trouble, 2001. Right off the bat, David smashes a window playing baseball. Normal for you Yanks, but to a Brit like myself, utterly alien. Honestly, 99 times out of 100 in the UK, it's a football, we call it a football, yes, not a soccer ball, doing the damage. The other times, a cricket ball. Maybe that's why David never quite cracked the British market. He's just too all-American for us overly polite limeys. Reading on, and we see David ruin a school photograph because he couldn't help it. He then eats dog treats because he's hungry. We soon hit the infamous cat tail pulling scene. David decides to give his poor cat's tail a hearty yank. Cue the startled yowl, claws extended, and David's oblivious grin. When confronted, his excuse: "But she likes it." David mate, try pulling that stunt on Lucky and see if you still have fingers left. Trust me, cats hold grudges. I stood on Lucky's tail by accident, and he went and peed on my pillow out of spite. They're tiny, fluffy mob bosses. And who can forget David trying out a swear word? Well, David can't. The result? David miserable, mouth foaming with soap. Apparently, washing kids' mouths out with soap wasn't just a phrase. And guess what? Some parents still swear by it today, pun fully intended. Watch your language, Gem Beta. That F-bomb might come with a side of Dove. Smash subscribe if you've never had your mouth washed out by soap. I'm hoping that will be all of us. Number 2, David goes to school, 1999. If you thought David was a handful at home, School David is next level chaos. He's late, calls out answers, chews gum, and tries redecorating his classmates' shirts with paint. Lunchtime turns to anarchy when David cuts in line. By the way, how bald are these kids? You could literally count individual hairs. Ultimately though, this book is basically David's speedrunning detention. One moment, however, genuinely enrages me. David clearly needs the loo, but his teacher snaps, "Again? Seriously, teachers, denying bathroom breaks isn't just strict, it's Geneva Convention territory. If your classroom feels like Alcatraz, maybe let the kids pee." Honestly, I still have trauma from being told to hold it during double maths. Let's just say my times tables and my bladder control were both underwhelming that year. Smash like if you remember when a teacher didn't allow you to go to the loo, and it still makes you angry. Number 1, No David, 1998. Released almost 28 years ago, No David is the original, the best, and the brattiest out of the entire series. When you open this book and see the end paper, you're set up very well for the type of character David is. It's the word no repeated again and again. It leaves you in absolutely no doubt about what type of book you're going to get. One where chaos reigns supreme. No David is simply the OG chaos maker. From muddy footprints indoors to attempted cookie thievery, David set a new standard for kid-lit anarchy. Before David Shannon dropped this mud pie on pristine American children's literature, kids' books were gentle, mild affairs. Clifford worried about muddy paws, Franklin grappled with admitting he's scared of the dark, and Little Critter's biggest rebellion was spilling juice while helping Mum at the shops. No, David turned this entire genre upside down. This was captured in its most grotesque glory in one unforgettable spread. David, digging up his nose like he's mining for emeralds, with the words, "Stop that this instant." Later, a full-page display of his open mouth, absolutely crammed with chewed up food bits like a compost bin at a school dinner hall. Carrots, drumsticks, broccoli, it's all in there, swimming around in what was, at the time, one of the most viscerally gross illustrations ever approved for children's publishing. Compare this to Caillou. Yes, he tantrums and pinches, but he's clean cut and glossy. He's the type of child whose mum makes him wipe the table and brush after every meal. David picks his nose and is proud of the boogers. He chews with his mouth wide open, proudly displaying food fragments like he's hosting a gallery of gunk. Caillou might scream, but David visually assaults the reader. David wasn't just a naughty boy, he was a full-on cultural shift. In a genre where nice kids apologized and learned gentle life metaphors, David said no to all of it. Literally. He was messy, he was loud, and he was just shockingly real. Kids loved him, and parents, they were secretly relieved. Finally, a child worse than their own. And for 90s mums reading bedtime stories after a long day, David was practically therapy. The twist. By now you're probably thinking, great, but what's the point? Well, get this. David Shannon revealed he based David on himself as a kid, a boy who heard no a lot and exaggerated mischief to teach lessons humorously. David's antics aren't celebrated, they teach boundaries in a non-preachy way. Crucially, each book ends with love. In David Goes to School, David might make a mess in the classroom, but he earns redemption when he cleans up the chaos and is then rewarded with a gold star for his efforts. In No David, David's mum hugs him and says, "Yes, David, I love you," showing that even after chaos, David is loved unconditionally. In David Gets in Trouble, remember that ruined cake incident? David may have laughed it off at the time, but it did bother him. He woke up with a guilty conscience in the middle of the night and asked Mum for forgiveness. David was indeed forgiven and comforted, falling back to sleep soundly with his conscience abated. These books don't just entertain, they model behaviour in a way that kids can understand. Big, bold pictures, one-liners, chaos and consequence. And the reassurance that being naughty doesn't mean being unloved. David is loud, David is messy, but David is us. In short, David's wildest moments aren't just for laughs, though they are hilarious. They're carefully crafted to help kids figure out the boundaries of good behaviour while knowing they are loved unconditionally. We'll give the final words over to David Shannon. Of course, when his mum says no, it's because she worries about his safety and she wants him to grow up to be a good person. Deep down, she's really saying, "I love you." I'm Snipe Snap, he's Lucky. Snipe, snap, out.